We could do mathematical calculations way faster than any human ever could possibly do. It's a new type of a CPU where instead of crunching numbers, we're crunching words. Like, this is something we really could not do efficiently in the past. It's fundamentally a new tool that we have.
You tend to always be pushing into the thing that's exciting you, because if you're not excited about it, it's really hard to do. It's hard anyways. It's so hard. If you're not like super interested in it and you're not passionate about the problem set, it's the grind just brings you down.
Welcome to another edition of Cloud Unfiltered. I'm your host, Michael Chenitz. And today we have for the, I don't know if it's the third or fourth time, but I think it's the third. But we have Shannon and Darren from Acorn Labs. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing great.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Man. Third time's a charm. Yeah. The other two weren't good enough, so this time we'll deliver.
Well, no, actually, they were really good. Except we have to kind of like rewind and reversal, and then go forward again. Because last time we started talking about this new endeavor you guys have used, but Acorn Labs previous to that was known as something differently. And then now it's kind of morphed, and rightfully so. I think you guys are going the right direction, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's first introduce you guys a little bit. In case people don't know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself? Who wants to go first?
Shannon, you go first.
All right. Yeah, my name's Shannon Williams. I am the president here at Acorn. And Darren and I have been working together along with Shen and Will, our team, for almost 15 years now. We started cloud.com before we started Rancher, and now we're working on Acorn. But we tend to work together as a group to build open source products and projects that, sit in the area of orchestration and management. First we were working on infrastructure as a service, then Kubernetes and container management. And now we're working on AI. So our focus at Acorn is really how to build an open source platform to orchestrate, building assistants and agents, and how to make that as seamless as orchestrating containers was with Rancher.
And hi, I'm Darren Shepard. I'm a chief architect and co-founder, and been working with Shannon forever. Previously complained a lot about Kubernetes on Twitter. Now I just complain about AI on Twitter. So that's
as long as you still have something to complain about. That's what matters.
That's what keeps me excited. Is like something that I can just complain about and just say how terrible it is. So
it's a never-ending pile of things to complain about. Don't worry, you will always find something new.
And it's constantly shifting. That's why, Darren, I think, is like me. It's like there's something new out there, and that's what I want to go towards. I get bored very easily. Yep. So I Cloud Native was for a while. Cloud Native was my gig, and it's still in my heart. But I think I'm really interested in AI right now.
Yeah.
So I think he's the same way. Yeah.
Kubernetes just got too mature and too good, that it was like, I need something like more immature, some new technology, something, yeah. So it's like AI, that's what it is. So
I would certainly say as a startup founder, that's kind of always where you end up. Like there's never a lot of second and third time sort of going backwards. You tend to always be pushing into the thing that's exciting you, because if you're not excited about it, it's really hard to do. It's hard anyways. It's so hard to build new products and new companies and find markets and kind of find innovation. And sort of, if you're not super interested in it and you're not passionate about the problem set, it's the grind just brings you down, especially when you've had it's actually, I would say at some level, that's one of the things that gets harder as you've done multiple startups is, your level of, especially when they've been successful, right? Your level of what a success looks like keeps going up. I think when you first start your first startup, success is, can we pay ourselves a living? Can we work on this stuff and make enough money to actually pay yourself a living? And then, once you've had companies grow and you've seen sort of the impact and you've worked with really interesting customers and you've been part of really interesting communities, you now start setting bigger and bigger goals and bigger challenges for your team. And so it just gets you're constantly working on trying to find something super, super compelling. Yeah. And for us, this AI space is exactly where that is right now.
Yeah. And it's not because if you found something that worked in the past doesn't mean you have some magical solution to find the new thing. It's the effort to build a new product doesn't really change. It's just a lot of annoying hard work of iterating and a lot of bad ideas. It's basically
a lot of ideating. Yeah, it's the throwing stuff against the wall and thinking, is that a big enough problem? Or
Yeah.
is there enough pain there that it's worth putting all of your heart and soul into trying to solve it and build? Because, we're all software people at the core more than even business people. We just like writing software that's really useful and valuable. And, you're kind of in a marketplace where there's hundreds of other people trying to do the same thing, will come up with interesting new ideas and push them out there as the market is just frothy. And that was like that when we were doing Docker, stuff back in 2014. And it's like that doing AI in 2024, 10 years later, it's just so frothy and so interesting. And the complexity sort of spikes as that interest goes up and more solutions come to market.
So it's interesting because when we went to KubeCon and I saw you in Paris, the two things that were really resonating were platform engineering and AI. Those were like the two big things. But if we look at platform engineering and what people are creating now, I kind of feel bad for people that are starting or just releasing their solutions right now, because I feel like the way that we're going to consume this technology, even in the next like 6 months, is going to be so different. The way that I consume technology now is different. I work smart, so I try and use AI to figure out and to orchestrate things that I do in my living. And the way that with agents and assistants and all these other things, even the way we do UI is going to change, because now we're going to have AI assisted kind of UI elements that might look way different than what they would do. So what do you guys think about these people that are, creating this or have created solutions right now, and where it's kind of going to go in the next,
I mean, Michael, you just described the reason we pivoted. I mean, as a company, when we started out, we left Rancher after, being acquired through SUSE. We spent, almost 2 years there. At the end of that time, as we walked, we were like, we really weren't totally finished working on how to simplify containers but it's interesting, just 1 year of working on it, and we were pretty convinced that anything we built was going to be heavily redacted and modified by AI, and how we wanted to use it, how other people were using it. And that's where we just were like, gosh, I don't know that there's orchestration and interfaces and automation and management layers that aren't at their core leveraging AI in the next 10 years. And so for us, as we started to think about, well, maybe we add AI to what we're working on, we pretty quickly realized that, oh my gosh, this landscape is the Wild West. There's really no adding AI to what you're working on. That doesn't make any sense for a team like us that lives architecting and orchestrating and management and open source. And so where we ended up was really, can we look at this ecosystem that's full of LLMs, full of different approaches to building assistants and co-pilots and agents, and full of endpoints that those things need to talk to, and can we make that easier to work with? And I think all of a sudden we saw it's like that classic thing where if you're used to hammer, you see everything as a hammer, or you look whatever, however that goes. And we were like, gosh, this is a lot like the same kind of orchestration problems we were dealing with 10 years ago with containers and with infrastructure as a service. And it was like, wow, okay, how do we manage identity? How do we manage users? How do we run these things in the right places? How do we manage a complex world of LLMs? How do we manage, not that you're going to create one assistant, but that you're potentially going to create lots of assistants, and those assistants are going to be working with each other. You're going to have fully independent agents that need to run, and you're going to need to find templates and standardized mechanisms for defining these things, controlling them and running them. And all of a sudden, you start to see these similarities between the challenges we were dealing with application orchestration and infrastructure orchestration, and now you're applying it to building applications that are AI powered instead. And so that's where the similarities caused us to think that there was a need, right? There was an opening in the market to build some technology that kind of fit that same role that Kubernetes ended up playing in the, container ecosystem, an open source product that could orchestrate and was easy for people to get started with.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, for me, when we were doing kind of like the first round of Acorn, we're trying to simplify Kubernetes. We're trying to like just get people to be more efficient. And I struggle with this so much of like, I've just watched technology get especially the infrastructure space, just get more and more complicated over the last like 15 years. Like we had cloud, which was supposed to be like when it first came out, like 2008 or whatever, like, oh, this is a simpler, easier way to do things. And then it just grew into this complex thing. So it's like, how do we then like get back to a simple solution? And so like that's what we were trying to go with Acorn. Is like what's the next evolution? What's the next step? Like how do we make this easier? And so now looking at AI and really understanding it, it's like I do honestly believe AI is that next generation that is going to end up kind of giving us that next like order of magnitude in productivity. It's like, how do we, just has like, that's what cloud did of like, it went from, infrastructure and manually, racking and stacking gear and stuff to doing cloud. How do we go to that next level? And that I really do think it's AI. It's like the devil's in the details though. It's like, because it's like, it's not, you don't have to be very like smart to predict like, oh yeah, AI is going to change everything. But what really got me excited is when I dug into it, because me, as most engineers, I kind of looked at AI and like, this is garbage, like whatever, like it's never right, it's wrong, whatever. But like when I started to get into AI and specifically the idea of like agents and stuff, is I see so many similarities in the concepts of how you could use AI to accomplish tasks through like orchestration to how we did things in Kubernetes. It's a different paradigm because it's not exact. AI is not going to give you an exact answer, but like the idea of agents working in kind of like basically a control loop, but reconciliating, like it has a goal, a task, it has an input, it's trying to accomplish something. I see so many similarities that's what I get excited about. It's like, okay, I've spent all my years, doing infrastructure, orchestration, whatnot, all of these things I've learned about orchestration. If I can now like take those general concepts, bind that to AI, I think we could really do some amazing things. And infrastructure is really interesting. I don't think like what we're doing with Acorn is not necessarily like infrastructure related. Like we're just we're like, AI is this new workload. How do we help people use and manage and deploy and build agents and stuff like that? But if you look at something like infrastructure, it's really interesting because like the whole space is fairly, like we consolidated down to a couple of core technologies that AI knows really well. So it's like, why can't I use AI to start orchestrating these things? It knows it really well. It's just like, you just need to build the patterns and stuff. And that's kind of like, that's what Kubernetes was. It was like, Kubernetes is just really a pattern. So it's like Kubernetes revolutionized the whole infrastructure space. Why can we not develop these patterns with AI and then revolutionize, maybe infrastructure or more, just a lot of different things. So it's like I get excited on that. Like that's what kind of, that's what keeps me, doing this or whatever.
So just to step back for a sec, why don't you tell the listeners, in case they don't already know, what is GPTScript and what are you guys working on?
So we introduced GPTScript about 4 months ago, and it's really at its core, it's a way of describing AI applications. It's a way of saying you are an AI application. You're being powered by this LLM. You have access to this set of tools, which could be, systems, it could be CLIs, it could be data, and you have these goals. And then giving it a runtime that can sit right on your laptop and leverage your own access. And you can really build any kind of assistant or agent with it. You can, people have built web services, they've built local assistants, they've built local, chatbots, things like that, right out of the bat with the product. The goal, though, so we see GPTScript as sort of like the beginning stage of building a fully orchestrated platform, and we're going to be rolling that out quite soon as well. And the platform idea is just how do you take sort of this standardized mechanism for running and creating assistants and agents and LLM powered apps, and now begin to manage that in a more complex universe, a place where you've got lots of people, you've got lots of endpoints, you've got lots of policy and rules, and that we want to build in an open source way. So we want to build an open source framework that sort of manages the deployment of those, connects to the different LLMs you're using, and deals with all of the sort of detail work that an operations person has to deal with to bring that all into reality. How to deal with identity and access and policy and everything around that. So that's kind of the core of what we're building at Acorn now, is this next generation system. But already we're doing all sorts of interesting pilots and projects with teams that are just building assistants, building agents, and want to do it in a way that is controllable by them, that can run on teams' laptops, and that can be stacked. Because one of the things that's really obvious is, while it makes perfect sense for some SaaS company to attach a co-pilot to their product, or a system to attach a co-pilot to their product, when you start talking to organizations, they're not going to pay for 200 co-pilots, and they're not going to even want 200 co-pilots. What they really want is, they want assistants and co-pilots and agents that have the ability to talk to lots of systems. So they want to be able to basically build a stack of connectors. So connectors to CLIs and APIs and vector databases and services that they're going to consume. And they want to make those available to people to just write assistants and agents that can leverage them. So talk to my policy engine, go look at this information. If I'm an insurance company and I want to build a claims handling agent, I'm going to need to talk to 4 or 5 systems. I'm going to need to push information to users potentially. I'm going to be able to sort of define those connectors and the logic. And so what we're building with GPTScript is a way to describe those applications and to just provide through the prompt engineering necessary and the connections to systems to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's if you get down to the real technical low level, there's kind of 3 key differences that I see GPTScript as opposed to kind of most of the other stuff that's going out there. It's like, today, if you go in, you're like, I want to do AI. The very first thing you're going to hit is Python. You're going to be writing a bunch of Python. So you're writing traditional programming, and then you put some prompts in there. AI is fundamentally natural language. It's a sentence. You give it a sentence, it gives you back a sentence for the most part, right? So today, most frameworks are, you start with traditional code, and then you kind of put some prompts in there, some AI. GPTScript is the opposite of that. We start with the prompt. So it's like, we are kind of like AI first, where it's like the very first thing you're going to be doing is just writing prompts. You just write. So it's just a sentence. It's kind of underwhelming, because create a text file, put a sentence in there, run it, it gives you an output. But so we start with first AI, and AI has the complete ability to control flow, to call things, to execute. So we start with AI, and then we fall back to code. So it's like, if you can't do it efficiently or you have problems, you can fall back to traditional code. So it's like, we've inverted that paradigm. So that's the first thing that's kind of different about GPTScript. The second thing is we focus really a lot on kind of service integration, where, so it's like, once I have this AI engine, it can make decisions, it can do whatever. How do I get it access to things? Because you can't do anything. Like, an AI is just this fully stateless, just input, output type thing. It can't accomplish anything. How do I get it to accomplish something? It's got to plug into services. So we focus on, how do I plug in services? So we have a very nice, like, if you've got APIs or CLIs or anything, some traditional code, we allow you to plug that in really easily. So I kind of start with my AI, and then I can very easily plug in services. And so and the last thing is that, with GPTScript, you now have an artifact. It's like, I've created this piece of AI application, whatever you want to call it, but it becomes a real artifact that I can now publish and distribute and share. And so it's this first class AI artifact. And so that becomes quite powerful. And those are the 3 things that I think is kind of what's kind of different, that sets us apart than a lot of the other stuff that you see out there.
Yeah. What's interesting though is just, even in this last 4 months that you've started, I could already see this replacing things like Terraform and Chef and Puppet and all that stuff very easily with very little effort. Because the nice thing I can say about GPTScript, and I've been playing around with it with the last 5 days or so. I even did my whole podcast pipeline in it in about 5 minutes, and now it transcodes, it converts it to audio, it transcodes it creates my YouTube descriptions. It's great. It's done everything that I actually took 2 hours to write Go code in. And now it actually does it faster than what I was doing before for some reason. I don't know. Maybe my Go code is awful. Yeah. But anyway, and it probably is, because I haven't written code in a long time. But, the other thing is that that's not where it stops, though. So already you can do all that stuff. And by the way, I have to go back for a second here. The nice thing about it is I can tell you all the things you need in that text file, because there's only 3 or 4 things. it's not like many. It's like args.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
Yeah.
your services you want to run, and if you want to add another service, just put the name of that in there and then create it down below, and ask for the same things. Ask for args. Ask for, you know, create your little.
It's almost like
It's funny. It kind of reminds you of Docker the first time you use Docker, because it's so like
It's
it's
so
just
easy.
so obvious. You're just like, oh, just describe what you want.
Yeah,
I
I
always
didn't actually have to read a lot. Yeah, go
like
ahead.
like I build something and I'm like it's funny because I'll build something like I have this new project coming out that's like heavily integrating the CLI, and it's really cool what you can accomplish with it. So when I demo it, it's like, look all this stuff they could do. It's really cool and it's pretty impressive. And then I'm like, okay, let me show you how it's built under the hood, and it's like 3 sentences, and it's like it's almost like underwhelming, but it's like, look, like
It really is. It's like, should this work?
yeah, it's like because that's the thing. It's like it reminds me when I learned Go way back when or whatever. Is like I would look at some Go code and I'm like, no, that's too easy. Like because I came from a Java world where like you need like thousands of lines to do anything. And I'm like, no, like that HTTP server where you're serving it like that can't be like production grade. And it's like, no, it really is. It's like it can be that easy. It's like that's the fun thing about GPTScript is like like
Well, just think about the audience it opens up. I don't write code at all,
Yep.
but I'm building these things on a regular basis to help me with stuff that I need to do. And as a non-developer, the idea that I can that there's already a connector to a database, or there's already a connector to an API, and I can just say like, oh, go pull that data and then transform it in this way, and then prioritize the things that I need to work on based on this. I mean, it's like having an army of assistants, and it does an excellent job at talking to systems in a way that it's dramatically more efficient than a UI. I mean, like my two options are UI, which
Yep.
can be painful and slow and an enormous amount of copy and paste and clicking around and trying to, or now telling, just talking. I mean, honestly, there's going to be a point where I'm not even typing. I'm just
Yep.
speaking, and it's going to go and do it. And I think the power of these LLMs to replace interfaces and to replace orchestration systems is very, very, very impressive. And
It's interesting because playing around with ChatGPT 4.0, I think that really was a game changer, because I could talk to it and I was like, I redesigned the furniture and the style of my living room, and I was like, tell me about the style, and I just talked to it and took a picture. And it's like, oh, you picked mid-century modern and the way that you did these colors, and it was talking to me like a person, and I could ask questions. And the other part of that is that my son is 7, and he's super into like Legos and playing Lego Worlds, which is like a game where you just do Lego stuff. And he's asking all these questions, and it's answering him, and he's answering continuous questions like it's a person. And to me, that's a game changer.
Yeah. Like I love, it's like I love systems, and it's like it's so much fun to put a chat interface on top of a system. So with GPTScript, it's really easy to integrate with APIs through Open API. If you have an Open API schema where you can integrate like pretty much directly, or if you have a CLI that wraps the API or whatever. So it's like it's really fun to put a chat interface, because then like you can just start talking to the system, like, or just typing, because we don't do voice or whatever, but like, or we don't have that yet, I guess. But it's like just dumb things, like because I run like I have this like assistant that can just run things on the CLI, and it was like the other day it was just like I had a little problem with WSL2 was not using all the CPU, and I'm like, I wanted to test it. So I'm like, oh, can you run Sysbench and then just pin all the CPU cores? Because like I know like Sysbench is like a program and I can type the arguments, but I don't know off the top of my head. I have to Google it real quick. So I can just tell it. And the cool thing is like it will go and run it. And even if it hallucinates an argument that's wrong, it then has the ability to go, oh, that was wrong. Let me try this. And then like maybe it's right. And if it's wrong a second time, you can just say like, just run -- help. And then it's like, oh, okay, I'll run -- help. It sees the argument and it goes, oh, I should have done this. And it's like, it's just fun. Like, I just enjoy that of like, because like I'm super lazy about things where it's like, look, I know I could figure it out, but I could just tell you. And like,
absolutely.
What becomes really obvious when you're talking to companies is across a company with 20,000 employees, the number of people who have interesting ideas that they could do if they had the technical knowledge of how to do them, it's incredible. And so like I know there's this fear that we're going to build AI to replace some menial task, and I'm sure there's reality in that. But the benefit of having really bright people using AI is like really obvious really quickly. And it's like, oh, we can do a lot more with the people we have and create realistically like dramatically better customer experiences, dramatically better employee experiences, dramatically better, products for the market if we give people these tools. And that's where like the conversations we're having right now are all about like, okay, well, so once you've sort of built your library of tools, and now what if you give the ability to create assistants to everyone, to teams, to employees, and they can build assistants, but those assistants behave with the exact same access and the same privilege that they themselves have. So much like I trust you, Mike, to use any UI that I've given you or
No,
CLI
you
or
shouldn't do that.
you're trusted up to the point where you can use the system. Now, if the person and their assistant that they've created are using those systems, there's the same level of trust when it's coming from them and they're accessing it with those credentials or that person's access privilege. So there's a really interesting chain of confidence that starts to get developed.
One of the fun things we've done with GPTScript is like, because we didn't build like a SaaS or a distributed system or whatever, is like GPTScript is like, it's like the same as kind of like Python. It's just an interpreter. It's a thing. And so you can really just kind of run it however you want. You could run it server side and you can run it in like a Lambda but you can also just run it on your desktop. And that's where we're finding a lot of the kind of like the quick wins. It's like, because your desktop, you're already authenticated. Like you are you or whatever. So it's like, if I can run that all client side really easily, then it's leveraging all your existing access policies and stuff, which I can almost sound scary, but we have a whole model of like granting and stuff like that. But anyways, but it's like it's really cool, like the kind of the flexibility of because we kind of made GPTScript as this kind of this like just very small dumb thing. Like we didn't try to build this kind of massive service or platform. It's like just this. It's like Node or whatever. It's just a program, and you can just run it however you want, and it opens up to a lot of flexibility. It's like in the DevOps world, it's like typically I seem to see that like DevOps people are kind of like AI curmudgeons, or like they're not really on board with it, and they're like, yeah, right, you're not going to do my job or replace me, which I honestly don't think is going to happen. But like,
No.
but I would love to see like more people play around with like GPTScript, because it's this fun little tool that you can very easily integrate into any flow or whatever. Like there was a great demo on one of our we do these live streams every week. There'll be one tomorrow, or we try to do them every week, where someone demoed basically like there was an alert from CloudWatch, which then kicked off a Lambda, which ran a GPT script, and then that GPT script was given access to some APIs and like SSH. So it was able to look up like, oh, there's this an alert. What's the VM? Oh, it has high CPU. Let me SSH in. And then they actually let the script kill like a process. So it was like they did this little like auto remediation. And it's like, that's such low hanging fruit. Like just little things like that, where it's like, just make your life a little better by, so it's fun. I don't know.
Think about how many things that replaces. I mean, it's not just the orchestrations like I talked about before, like Terraform and Puppet, but it could be CI/CD. It could be configuring a network using, in the old school days when I was doing iOS configs and, all that other kind of stuff. All that stuff is now replaced with a single tool.
Yeah, it's like I have a little assistant that I wrote that I do for GitHub workflows, because like I hate writing GitHub workflows, but like need them or whatever. So it's like, so what I do is like I'm just like, okay, I need a workflow to do this, and then it goes and generates the workflow, and at the end of the day, I got to commit it and put it in. So it's like I know what it's going to change and everything, but it's like, it's right like 95% of the time. But then the cool thing is like, even if it's wrong, I create the workflow, I commit it, I push it in, and like it kicks off. And then what I'll do is like, if it fails, I'll just say that failed. Why? Like, I don't even give it very much information. I'm like the laziest person of like prompts that I give. I'm just like, dude, that didn't work. Like, fix it. And it'll be like, oh, okay. And it runs the GH command line and it gets the logs, and then it'll recommend a solution. And it's like, it's not always 100% correct, but it's like, it weeds out the obvious issues. Like if it was an obvious dumb thing, like the 80% of the time is some dumb obvious thing, like, oh, you forgot to give it the secret or something like that. It will tell you the dumb obvious thing. If it's more complicated and hard, it might not get it right, but like that's why you're paid the big bucks. So you should know what the more complicated and hard thing. So it just makes my life easier. And so it's like I really enjoy it for like just all simple mundane things.
As an analogy, though, I mean, it's more like the $6 million man or the bionic man or bionic woman, because it's just giving you that added, infrastructure and ways of doing things that makes you super powered.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really what it's doing.
I look at this AI stuff of like, we invented like the CPU that we have today, which is basically just mathematical calculations. So it's like, so we could do mathematical calculations way faster than any human ever could possibly do. Like, and like, so we had this tool to do mathematical calculations way fast. It was like, it didn't like replace humans or whatever. It just empowered us to do more things. So like, I look at AI as like it's a new type of a CPU where instead of crunching numbers, we're crunching words. Like it's language. This is something we really could not do efficiently in the past. It's fundamentally a new tool that we have that it's like now that I can do this, it's like I don't know, like this should just make us like I just obviously there's always some weird downsides of technology, but like I just see it like it's just gonna just make us more efficient, just give us like better, cool, like just do all the annoying things I just don't want to do anymore.
From a political perspective, though, it's like every time you have new technology, you have pushback. It was like when we went to DevOps, that was a huge thing. Like the network and the software people and the server people, they were all segmented in their roles. Converging this stuff was really hard. Now you have the DevOps people saying AI, it's like every time there's something new,
Yeah.
there's people that are like, I'm not going to learn that new technology.
And and it's like, and the thing though is like the complaints that people have about it are like 100% correct. It's like this is a new technology. It's a new, so it's like that's the thing is it's like if you're developing websites using like React and Next or whatever, it's like AI is not really going to replace that. Like that works well enough, right? Like AI is going to like enable new things, like just new realms of stuff that we can do. And then also for like the existing things that, it's like if you're developing, traditional JavaScript applications, you have Copilot or whatever, which makes it just more efficient. So the existing stuff, it'll probably make it more efficient, but it's just going to open up new realms. So it's like the same stuff that you're doing today, like we won't probably fundamentally change, but AI will make it a lot more efficient. So you just won't have to do a lot of the dumb meaningless tasks. Like, cause I get really excited about these autonomous agents and stuff. And so I'm trying to build like a more of like a server, like a framework where I can do fully autonomous agents and stuff, because I want it for like the dumb things of like, look, like if somebody submits a PR and it fails, like why did it fail? Like I can use AI to just do that first round of analysis and catch all of the initial things instead of you having to be like it's like if someone puts in like an issue on open source, like if somebody puts an issue on open source, there's a lot of times like that issue is a known thing or something like that, where it's like, so somebody's got to go in there and say like, oh yeah, it's a duplicate of this, or yeah, we've already addressed that or whatever. It's like those dumb, meaningless tasks that somebody's got to do. It's like, oh, just automate with AI. A lot of it, a lot of that low hanging fruit can be automated. So
I think one of the cool things that we've been really working on is this, when we talk about an assistant framework or an agent framework, there's a layering happening now, Mike, that looks like you're starting to kind of connect assistant to assistant to assistant and build more interesting tools. And I think, when I imagine how I want to be working as, a person that juggles a lot of different hats as a founder, right? Sometimes I'm brainstorming new products. Sometimes I'm writing websites. Sometimes I'm writing, I'm doing outreach to potential users, or I'm getting ready for presentation. Like I actually could see multiple different LLMs and elements working for me in different capacities. And I think that there's going to be a world where, I almost in the same way that I have most managers have a team of people, that most employees are going to have a team of AI coworkers or co-supporters, assistants that work with them on challenging problems and say like, hey, do this. And it's going to allow for less work that feels mundane and more work that I think is really impactful. And that, that's going to be interesting. And what, like what we've seen every other time we've had these big jumps forward, there's just tons of new value generated, new tools, new, like you think about the more I just think about something like I just got back from traveling with my family, and the work that goes into planning something as simple as a family trip, especially now, right? Nobody has travel agents. Everyone does it themselves. They spend enormous numbers of hours. But I can tell you, just with using how much ChatGPT is being used for things like travel planning, that you can imagine much smarter, much better, much more tuned AI assistants that are incredible travel planners that, you can tell it, hey, something's happened. We've gotten, we missed a flight. Our luggage is gone. And it could understand, oh, well, I know you're gluten free. You tend to like this kind of place. Here's 2 or 3 places where you could quickly go. Let's get you some food. Let's get you into a new hotel. I booked you a car. That you're just chatting. Just in the same way you used to maybe call an assistant or you used to call an agent. You can imagine that. And what is that doing? Like it's allowing us to spend more time on things that we value, right? Whether it's our passions or it's our work or it's others, and that's going to equate to, I think it's going to generate more jobs. It's going to create more, people spending time doing things that are. Most people in the world are far from experiencing like a world full of luxury travel and enormously cool experience and stuff. And so as we kind of bring these things up and put them in more people's hands, I think we're going to see just better and better human experiences.
As you talk about that, I almost feel like there needs to be a new interchange format, almost like, like a way for agents to advertise themselves to you, because of the fact that, people are going to want to connect with an agent. So, there should be a standard interchange format for agents
Yeah.
that could be different, that would allow people just to like, hey, connect and consume that.
Well, just think about your phone, right? Like just imagine the reality of, okay, well, you have your phone assistant, right? Your Siri or your Android assistant, and then you have your apps, which are a natural way. But those two things have barely any relationship today. It's pretty obvious that within 3 years, those things will be deeply integrated. That you will basically, that every one of your apps that you care about, especially your information apps, your email apps, your banking apps, your apps that are for United Airlines or your apps for Marriott hotels, your apps for Fandango, they're all going to be connected to your Siri, and you're just going to say, "Hey, I think we want to go see Minions 4 or whatever the hell Minions 23, and can you, we need 5 tickets together, and we want to go see it around 6 o'clock. Where can we get the tickets? Can you book them for us?" Yeah, you're booked in now to go to the theater down the road, or you're going to have to drive 10 minutes because everything's full. It's the opening weekend. And it's just it'll be done, right? That time that you would have spent to go buy, look at the price, hit the button, and just is now free.
But every one of those models that you're connecting to is going to need to know how to communicate with like a ticket master. And there needs to be more of a standard interchange. And I don't think it's going to be the same as like, as the API descriptors that we have now, because I think there needs to be different information.
Well, what's really fascinating though about AI is like kind of the lack of need for standards is like, because when we think about connecting systems, they have to be these kind of concrete data structures and things like that. It's like where AI doesn't need that. Like that's been what's been really
Yeah,
interesting
sure.
with what we've done with GPTScript, because we started GPTScript as kind of like AI first. Our unit that we're dealing with is just called a tool. So you create tools, tools interact with other tools, tools you can chat with tools, you can so but what's really interesting is the interface between those is purely text. It's just text in and text out. So we don't have to like turn things into concrete data structures. Whereas like what you see is like if you start with like Python or whatever, you spend a significant amount of time
Mhm.
dealing with the code to AI barrier of like, how do I, because a code needs a concrete data structure to be able to go forward. But like when you abandon that and just like, no, it's just kind of text back and forth and it's free form, it's information, it becomes like more freeing. It's really interesting because we build all of these within GPT scripts. We have these core concepts of kind of how to compose tools, and there's this concept called context, which is really interesting to build up more complicated stuff. and all these things are really doing is just like contributing kind of like sentences, and you just put together a bunch of sentences, and so you don't even have to care so much about what's the format it's in. So like that's why I think it's interesting when you go into this higher level world of like what would AI look like in the future, is like you get more towards these fuzzy interfaces, because we know the difficulty of maintaining interfaces and what happens as they change and stuff like that. Well, it's like we don't need those concrete interfaces anymore, because it's like we're really just exchanging logical concepts and ideas. And so as long as the text describes the concept and idea, then like you can exchange it. Only when you get to pure data do you need, oh, data has to be in a perfect structure. But like, so it's really quite interesting, because like this is the stuff that I'm fluent on, because it's like, because my background of like Kubernetes and controllers and stuff is like I have a deep understanding of like these, how do you basically have, because a controller is like it can be almost like an agent. A controller is just these these loops that work on a shared data structure. So it's like how do I get agents to communicate on shared data, or what, it's like what do these patterns look like of agents communicating with each other? Because that's the real interesting like technical problem, because you see this in research papers of like, oh, I can have these agents and agents collaborate and stuff like that. But like there's a lot of nuance of like what's the technical detail to actually get that, because like there's concepts of like a thread or a context, and so it's like how is the context shared between different agents, how are they communicating, is it a shared context, do each agent has its own context, does that context get reset with each message, is it stateful, stateless, synchronous, asynchronous, how do you do all, and like that's the stuff I get excited. So it's like that's specifically like the stuff I'm working on right now, because like with GPTScript we've kind of gotten towards like the fact where it's like I can build a solid agent, and I can actually do a little bit of multi-agent collaboration, but like how do I bring it to the next level of like synchronous and asynchronous and the things that are more long-lived, and like just getting into these things have more of like an identity and stuff. So I don't know. I get excited about this
stuff. So we're getting towards the end here. I typically do a piece called buzzworthy or buzzworthless. Basically, I'll give you a couple terms and you tell me whether you think they're still buzzworthy or buzzworthless and why. So I'll start with orchestrator. Is an orchestrator still buzzworthy, or is it buzzworthless at this point?
So this is what I feel is like, because like orchestrator, I don't know, like that just became the hot term for like logic or whatever. So it's like, oh yeah, like orchestrators, that's dead, right? It's AI agents, right? But to me, it's not fundamentally different. It's like I'm going to do that, but with a new technology. So it's like no, like orchestration, like that's now it's agents in collaboration, but it's all the same stuff. I don't know, Shannon, what do you think?
Buzzworthless. Orchestrators, I mean, come on, it never had any meaning anyways. It was always too big and broad to be useful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with buzzworthless.
Yeah.
So how about agents then? Let's go with agents. Buzzworthy or buzzworthless?
Oh yeah.
Oh, buzzworthy big time. Yeah. It's the best conversation right now is like, where do you go? Are you trying to build co-pilots, or are you trying to just let the damn machines go? And I think that's when it gets really exciting, because I think for most businesses, things like co-pilots are a lot more comfortable, and like it's much better to, but I'll tell you, when I go talk to really smart companies, they're like, oh no, we are very agentic. We want systems where if all things are behaving normally, the person, we're taking our people out of the loop, and we're letting the AI solve problems, and these things like what kind of claim should I approve if I'm an insurance person? There's a lot of claims that are really easy yeses, or really easy no's, like, oh, you're unfortunately your policy requires you to pay for that. We don't do it for free. It's a pretty easy no. And so solving a lot of those easy things and having them be completely agentic, where there is no human in the loop, I think is going to be the standard. So buzzworthy in a big way for me.
And I think there's a huge disconnect between because like everyone can conceptualize what like an agent would be, but how is that actually implemented? That's where that's the thing. It's like the implementation of what an agent is not going to be. It's like that's where it's gonna that's where it's exciting of like trying to figure out what that really is, because too many people today, I think, are leaning too much on what they know. It's like, this is the way we've done it always, and it's like, so it's like, oh, we just need to plug in this here. And then like, that's what an agent. And it's like, no, it's not working. A lot of these things are kind of garbage or whatever. But like, that's what I get excited. It's like, so I believe heavily in kind of this agent thing, but it's yet to be determined exactly how it's going to pan out, like what it's really going to look like.
I totally agree. Yeah. So anything to leave people with, if you had to leave people with, either on, what's in the near future, or what's next for you guys, or anything else?
As I get older, I used to think a lot was like, oh, what are things going to be like in a year? Because the year seemed like a long time. Now I think about often, what are things going to be like in 5 years? Because I'm old, and so 5 years seems like a short amount of time to me now. I'm like, oh, it's just 5 years. And I think right now, like, oh, what's the resistance to AI going to be like in 5 years? And I think it's going to have dissipated quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're going to see enormous benefits in our personal lives. We're going to see enormous benefits in, things that make us happy as people. But I think, I really appreciate, I'm glad I'm not a policy person in the government, because I really feel like we need lots of those people. We need to look at how this is going to impact people's lives. We need to take steps to mitigate the impact, because I do think, much like automation, much like, all the things we've done in the Industrial Revolution, like there are going to be significant market pains that happen because of this technology. And I think 5 years from now, those things will be biting. You'll start to see people really turning this stuff on in a big way. And all of a sudden, how many tax preparers are going to be out there, and people that have had, worked really hard, learned an enormous amount of knowledge. You're going to be able to do a lot more. I think you're going to be able to do a lot more tax returns with a lot fewer people. So how are we going to deal with that as a society is the part that as we head towards an election, as we think about bringing people into the government, and we think about, the role of government, it does strike me we need to find ways, potentially to cushion the impact of a pretty dramatic shift in what it requires a job to do, required people to do this. How many people are going to have virtual assistants that are really good? I think everyone's going to have a virtual assistant that is very close to as good as an executive assistant for a CEO, or as President Biden's assistant, right? Like some amazing assistant who knows all the people you talk to, instantly knows that if I want to talk to Darren, I probably need to schedule a meeting around this time because, he's busy during these hours and he's kind of flaky. So better grab him in this moment because I really need, like, we're going to have AIs that do that brilliantly. Like we're all going to have the best assistant ever. Think about that. Like that's awesome. But that also means a big change in, the people who actually, do that job today. So I'm very, very curious about how society handles all of this.
Yeah. And I think like, people, like there's a discussion, it's like, is AI a product or a feature? And I think like the answer is yes. It's like, it's going to, but like, you're basically like, it's like, people are talking about AI as though it's like one thing. It's like, it's just going to be spread across absolutely everything. It's like kind of trying to say the internet was one thing. It's like it impacted all of society in all different ways or whatever. And so we're very early in AI. I think, it's here to stay. It's going to basically kind of impact everything as we just get better at it. And it's moving at an incredible pace. You think about, like, as my analogy to like compare it to a CPU, it's like the CPU, the modern CPU or whatever, I don't know, let's say it was invented in like the 60s or something. In the 70s, they had all these great ideas of like how the computer would take over the world. And it took kind of like 40 years for most of those ideas to materialize. And I think it's kind of a similar thing with AI. We've kind of invented the basic building blocks. I think the LLM is an amazing innovation. But so it's going to take some time to see how this like go, but it's not going to be 40 years. It most likely will be more like 10 years. It's like, it's going to be much more accelerated, but it's like, it's here to stay. There's no reason to push back on it. It kind of, it's just going to just kind of improve everything in all these small little ways, just kind of everywhere.
Well, thanks so much for the insight. You guys are always so much fun to have on the show. I'll probably have you on many times more. So thanks again for coming on.
Yep. We love it. Always fun to chat.